A wealthy CEO enters a small-town diner during a business trip. A boy with bright blue eyes points at him and screams. His mom drops a plate in shock. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. For as long as she could remember, Carla Hernandez had worked the morning shift at Pineview Diner. It was a modest place. A flickering neon sign above the door, creaking vinyl stools lined up at the counter, and the aroma of sizzling bacon that greeted every new arrival. She had started as a teenager washing dishes in the back, dreaming of a brighter future. Over the years, she moved to waiting tables, then to managing the small staff, making just enough to keep herself and her son afloat. Life at the diner was not exactly glamorous, but it was predictable and safe, and Carla had learned to cling to any semblance of stability. Her son, Joey, was her pride and joy. 14 going on 30, he possessed a quiet maturity that sometimes made Carla's heart ache. She remembered him as a bright-eyed toddler who would burst into giggles the moment she blew raspberries on his belly. Now he stood eye level with her. The curly hair he'd once tugged impatiently now brushed back from a face that showed the shadows of worry no child should bear. But he was a good kid, helpful and kind, always offering to wash dishes or clean tables when she was busy serving the morning crowd. On this chilly autumn day, Carla had arrived even before the diner opened. She wiped down the counters, set out the salt and pepper shakers, and turned on the old radio that crackled out a cheery tune from decades past. As she straightened her apron, she spotted Joey huddled at a corner table, studying a worn math textbook. Sometimes, when business was slow, he would come in and do his homework before classes started. It was easier than sitting alone in their apartment, especially when Carla's schedule didn't allow her to drop him off at school herself. "Want some hot cocoa before the morning rush?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light. Joey looked up, flashing a small grin. "Sure, Mom," he said. "Thanks." Carla set a mug in front of him and ruffled his hair gently. They had fallen into this routine so seamlessly that it felt like an unspoken dance. She would pour coffee for the early regulars, serve Joey some breakfast, and he would do his best to help out if the crowd got busy. It wasn't the life she had once pictured for herself, but it was decent and honest, and with each tip she folded into her pocket, she reminded herself that she was providing for her son the best way she knew how. Yet today felt different from the start. An odd restlessness tugged at the edges of Carla's mind. She couldn't put her finger on why she was so uneasy, but she chalked it up to exhaustion. She had dreamed of a face the night before, a face from years ago, someone who had disappeared from her life before Joey was born. The dream was so vivid that she had woken up gasping, disoriented by the swirl of memories. When she'd forced herself to shake it off and roll out of bed, a strange heaviness still clung to her chest. It was probably nothing, she told herself, just echoes of a time long gone. But as the morning hours crawled forward, the diner's door swung open, and Carla felt the world shift under her feet. A tall man in a dark suit, the cut and fabric screaming elegance, stepped inside. He paused, scanning the nearly empty room. Carla's heart lurched and she nearly dropped the coffee pot she was carrying. She would have recognized those steady gray eyes anywhere, the precise way he carried himself, the unmistakable sense of confidence that always made everyone around him straighten up without realizing it. Nathaniel Rhodes. She had not spoken that name for 15 years, not since the day he left Pineview with his ambitions sky high and a heart so consumed by his dreams that he never looked back. And yet here he was, in the very diner she had made into her second home, as though fate had decided to toy with her when she least expected it. Carla stood rooted by the counter, her pulse hammering, while the old radio carried on with its happy tune that felt out of place in the midst of her internal turmoil. Joey noticed the abrupt change in his mother's posture. He glanced curiously at the man in the suit, who was now taking a seat in a booth near the door. There was something familiar about him, though Joey couldn't place it. Slowly, Joey's gaze flicked to his mom, and he saw the color drain from her face. In that moment, a small piece of every story she'd never told him seemed to surface. He swallowed, feeling a sudden churn in his stomach. Something was happening, something that had to do with the man in the suit and the haunted look in Carla's eyes. Joey snapped his textbook shut and stood, the motion drawing the attention of that elegantly dressed stranger. Their eyes met, and the man arched an eyebrow, noticing a tall, lanky teen who stared at him more boldly than any adult in the diner ever dared. Carla forced herself to breathe. She had a job to do, customers to serve. She tried to summon her best waitressing smile, but it faltered before it even reached her lips. Taking a slow step forward, she clutched her order pad in one hand and approached the booth. Nathaniel turned his gaze from Joey to her, and his expression registered a flash of recognition. But he masked it quickly, the way a seasoned businessman conceals surprise during negotiations. "Welcome to Pineview Diner," she said softly, willing her voice not to tremble. "What can I get for you?" For a moment he just stared, as if he weren't quite sure if he was dreaming or awake. Then a small nod. "Coffee, black please. And maybe a moment of your time." Carla tried to swallow the knot in her throat. "Sure," she said, scribbling an order she didn't really need to write down. "Be right back." Joey stood halfway between the counter and the booth, eyes darting from his mother to the stranger. He felt an inexplicable pull, a strange certainty that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. His mind flicked through possible scenarios. Was this man someone his mom knew? Had she dated him before? Had they been in love? He'd never seen her so undone by anyone's presence, not in all his 14 years. When Carla returned with the coffee, her hands shook slightly, causing a few drops to spill onto the saucer. Nathaniel noticed, of course he did. He had always been observant. Still, his words were measured as he murmured, "Thank you." Just then, before either Carla or Nathaniel could say another word, Joey walked up. His voice caught in his throat, but somehow he found the courage to speak. "Mom," he said, his tone urgent and strangely breathless. "That's him, isn't it? The man from that old picture." Carla's eyes went wide, and Nathaniel looked sharply at Joey. 1,000 unspoken questions filled the silence. Carla had never shown Joey that photo directly, or at least she thought she hadn't. Once, long ago, the picture had been tucked away in a small box of memories she couldn't bring herself to throw out. Joey must have found it, her smiling face pressed close to Nathaniel's, both of them too young to understand the way life could tear people apart. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Across from her, Nathaniel's expression shifted from polite curiosity to a flicker of something else, realization, followed by a swirl of confusion. He looked at Carla, then at Joey, and the 15 years of silence crashed down around them with staggering force. He began, but the words faltered. Carla stared at him, tears burning at the edges of her vision. She could scarcely believe this was happening, that the painful secret she'd kept hidden all this time might suddenly unravel here in the diner. "Joey," she managed, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, go back to your seat. This is the man in the photo," Joey pressed, voice rising, that determined look on his face intensifying. "You told me you left Pineview to protect me. Is he the reason why?" Before Carla could respond, a customer at the far end of the diner cleared his throat, glancing over as if sensing the tension. Carla felt the walls closing in on her, all the explanations she had rehearsed in her head, All the possible scenarios she had imagined, none of them prepared her for the raw reality of seeing Nathaniel Rhodes walk back into her life. The radio crackled, static interrupting the cheerful music, as if the universe itself were straining under the weight of what was happening. Nathaniel opened his mouth again, perhaps to say Joey's name, or perhaps to apologize for everything left unsaid. But he got no chance to speak, because Joey spun around, heading straight for the door, tears brimming in his eyes. Carla watched in dismay as her son fled, and for one fractured moment, she stood frozen between her past and her present. Nathaniel rose from the booth, laying a few bills on the table. Then he turned toward Carla, meeting her gaze with regret shimmering in his eyes. "Carla," he said quietly, as if her name itself were an unfinished confession. She closed her eyes and exhaled, steeling herself for whatever came next. "We can't do this here," she whispered. "Not now. Let me talk to him first." Nathaniel nodded, understanding that no words could fix 15 years of secrets in an instant. The silent promise that lingered between them was as fragile as spun glass, threatening to shatter under the slightest pressure. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like this story, and share it with friends. Carla watched Nathaniel walk out in the opposite direction, all smooth composure and unresolved regret. She wanted to run after Joey, to catch him before he made it too far, but her feet felt glued to the tiles. The few regulars who lingered in the diner pretended not to notice the emotional storm that had swept in, although she felt their eyes flicker over her now and again. She forced herself to breathe, to square her shoulders, and muttered a quick excuse about a family emergency to the line cook. Then she hurried outside, letting the door swing shut with a hollow clang behind her. Joey was already halfway down the block. His shoulders were drawn tight under his thin jacket, and when she called his name, he sped up. Carla broke into a jog, catching up to him just as he reached the intersection. She touched his arm gently, half expecting him to yank away, but he stopped. His eyes, still shiny with unshed tears, turned to meet hers. "Mom," he said, voice trembling. "Why was he here? Why now? And why didn't you ever tell me you knew someone like him?" Carla glanced at the ground, unsure where to begin. The autumn breeze stirred her hair, carrying with it the faint smell of car exhaust and bakery bread from the shop across the street. "Joey," she said, "I promise I'll explain. But not here, okay? Let's go home. I'll call to take the rest of the day off and we can talk." He studied her for a moment, and she could almost see the swirl of questions behind his gaze. Then he nodded, quiet and subdued. They walked back to the diner, retrieved their things, and Carla apologized profusely to her boss. Frank, the owner, took one look at Joey's pale face, then nodded his understanding without pressing for details. Carla was grateful for that. Sometimes the best thing anyone could do was let someone leave without a barrage of questions. Half an hour later, mother and son arrived at their small apartment, a cramped second-floor walk-up they had called home for nearly a decade. The living room was cozy but cluttered, with mismatched furniture and framed photos of Joey at various ages lining the walls. Carla gestured for him to sit on the couch while she grabbed 2 glasses of water from the kitchen. Her hands shook as she placed one on the table in front of him. She settled in beside him, every inch of her body bracing for the conversation she had managed to avoid for so long. Her heart ached just looking at him. In the late morning light that filtered through the curtains, she saw the boy who had always done his best to be strong for her. She owed him the truth, no matter how hard it would be to tell. "That man you saw," she began softly. "Nathaniel Rhodes. I knew him a long time ago, before you were born. We dated. I was 19 and he was 21. He had these big dreams of running his own company. He used to talk about it all the time." Joey's brows knitted. "Then what happened?" Carla swallowed. He got a big chance to leave Pineview for the city. He asked me to come with him, but I was scared. I'd just started classes at community college, and I didn't want to leave. We fought, and then he left. I didn't know I was pregnant until after he'd gone. I tried to find him, but he'd changed his number and moved around. Eventually, I decided I could handle it on my own. I didn't want him coming back just because he felt obligated. She paused, searching Joey's face. His expression flickered with confusion, hurt, and maybe a glimmer of empathy. So he never knew about me. Carla reached out, resting a hand on his knee. No, she whispered. I guess I was afraid he'd resent both of us if he came back for the wrong reasons. And now here he is after all this time. Joey let her words sink in. He rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand. Then why'd he show up today acting like we're just people he can walk in on? Carla shook her head. I don't know. Maybe he was just passing through. He became a CEO, started some big firm. He's obviously done well. Maybe he had business in Pineview. It might have been a coincidence that he walked into the diner. Joey leaned against the couch cushions, staring up at the ceiling. When I said, "Mom, that's him," it was like everything snapped into place. I recognized him from that photo I found in your closet. I've been wondering for so long who he was. Carla felt tears pricking her eyes. I'm so sorry I never told you, she said. I thought I was protecting you, or maybe protecting myself, from how he might react. Silence stretched between them, heavy yet strangely delicate. Joey finally gave a small nod. I understand, he said quietly. I'm not happy about it, but I kind of get it. They spent the rest of the day together trying to ignore the emotional turmoil. Carla made them simple sandwiches for lunch and they half-watched cartoons, neither one absorbing the bright images on the screen. All the while, Carla's mind kept returning to Nathaniel, his regretful gaze, the way he had whispered her name as though it contained every word he'd left unsaid. 3 days passed without a sign of him. She tried to convince herself it was over, that the past had simply brushed by like a stray breeze. Then, on a Wednesday, the diner's front door opened with a jingle just after noon, and in he walked. He stood at the threshold with that same carefully measured posture, scanning for her. A hush fell over the space. Carla's heart kicked in her chest. Joey was at school, so at least he didn't have to endure another public confrontation. She offered a tight nod and slipped out from behind the counter. Let's talk outside, she murmured. They exited through the back door into the narrow alley where empty crates and a couple of metal trash cans lined the walls. The hum of traffic and the clang of kitchen utensils merged into a muted backdrop. Carla folded her arms over her apron, feeling both defensive and vulnerable. Nathaniel cleared his throat. I'm sorry to show up again like this, he said, but I had to come back. I couldn't leave things the way they were. Carla lifted her gaze to meet his. Why now, Nathaniel? He hesitated, drawing in a breath. I never knew how to find you. After I left, I got so wrapped up in building my company. I thought about you sometimes, tried calling your old number once or twice, but it was disconnected. Eventually, I told myself you'd moved on. Then I came back to Pineview for a meeting with a potential client, stopped at the diner, and there you were. It felt like... He trailed off, searching for words. Like life was giving me a second chance to make things right. Her throat tightened. Right for you, or right for me and Joey? Nathaniel's eyes flashed with hurt. Both, he answered. I didn't know about him, Carla. Had I known, I would have... She cut him off, though her voice was low to avoid attracting attention through the back door. Don't say you would have stayed. We were kids, Nathaniel. We barely knew how to handle ourselves, let alone a child. I've spent 15 years taking care of him on my own, and now I don't know what to do with you suddenly appearing. He let out a slow breath. I'm not here to mess with your life. Or his. I just want a chance to meet him properly, to explain that I never meant to abandon him. I was young and foolish, but if there's any way to be part of his life. Carla looked away, struggling against a swell of conflicting emotions. She thought of Joey's quiet resilience, the way he'd grown up so fast. Could Nathaniel just waltz in and become his father after all these years? He's not a little boy anymore, she said. He's almost grown. And this is going to break his heart all over again if you can't commit. Nathaniel stepped closer, voice low and steady. I've come too far in my life to run away again. I promise you, Carla, I'm not going anywhere if he wants me around. But I can't even begin without your help. Please. She closed her eyes, recalling the defeated look in Joey's eyes when he first saw Nathaniel. He's open to talking, she admitted. He wants to know why you left, why you never looked for us. But he's scared too. Nathaniel nodded, relief flickering across his face. I'll take any step he'll let me. I just need to see him. Carla inhaled shakily. Then come by tomorrow evening. Let me talk to him first, make sure he's okay with it. Nathaniel's posture softened. Thank you, he said, and in his voice she heard the raw sincerity of a man who'd realized too late what he had lost. She stayed there in the alley, arms crossed, watching him walk away until he disappeared around the corner. The moment he was gone, she felt a wave of anxiety flood her. Could she really balance this delicate act, allowing Nathaniel into Joey's life while shielding her son from more disappointment? She would find out soon enough. She returned inside, plastering on her best professional smile and delivering plates of warm food to unsuspecting customers, all the while ignoring the tumult raging within. Tomorrow might bring resolution or heartbreak, but she had made her choice. Joey would decide if Nathaniel deserved a place at their table. She had no idea how the pieces might fall, only that she owed her son a chance to know the father he never had. In her heart, she prayed that this time Nathaniel was telling the truth, because she could not bear to watch Joey suffer another betrayal. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like this story, and share it with friends. Carla took the bus home that night, exhaustion settling into her bones. She had spent the rest of the afternoon in a haze, her thoughts swirling around the impending meeting between Joey and Nathaniel. She tried to reassure herself that this was the right decision. Joey deserved answers, and Nathaniel claimed he was here to stay if that was what they both wanted, yet a persistent knot of fear tugged at her. What if Nathaniel's presence only opened old wounds? What if he decided, after all, that fatherhood was too much trouble? No matter how determined he sounded, Carla knew how quickly feelings could change. When she finally reached their apartment building, she climbed the steps slowly, pausing on each landing as though weighed down by the uncertainty of tomorrow. The hall light flickered ominously, its dull glow reflecting her own sense of unease. Inside the apartment, she found Joey curled up on the couch with a textbook open on his lap. He looked up the moment she shut the door, setting aside his homework and offering her a tentative smile. She recognized the silent question in his eyes. Had she talked to Nathaniel? Was the plan still on? She set her purse on the kitchen table, took off her shoes, and approached the couch, lowering herself beside him. Tomorrow, she said softly, after your basketball practice, he'll come by for dinner if that's okay with you. Joey tugged at the collar of his t-shirt, clearly anxious. Yeah, he murmured. I guess I want to see him again. I still have questions. Carla reached for his hand. She noticed the faint tremor in his fingers, and it tugged at her heart. Ask anything, she told him. Don't hold back. He said he's ready to tell you whatever you want to know. Joey's gaze flicked toward the window, where the curtains billowed slightly in the breeze. What if he doesn't know the answers? Or what if I don't like them? Carla squeezed his hand gently. Then we deal with it together, she said, forcing a calm she didn't entirely feel. No matter what, I'm here for you. He nodded, and they lapsed into a silence that somehow felt both comforting and heavy. Carla wished she could take away his doubt with a single reassuring word, but life had taught her better. Some answers would only come with time and effort. Later that night, she lay awake in bed, staring at the thin cracks in the ceiling. She replayed the last few days in her mind, the shock of seeing Nathaniel, the fear in Joey's eyes, the trembling hope that maybe, just maybe, this could heal something inside them both. The next day was a blur. Carla clocked in at the diner extra early, working with robotic focus as she poured coffee, flipped pancakes, and made polite chit-chat with regulars. She forced herself not to peer anxiously at the door. Nathaniel wouldn't show up unannounced. He was coming tonight, and she still had hours to prepare, though she wasn't sure how to prepare for something like this. When the clock finally neared 3 in the afternoon, Carla hung up her apron and raced home to be there when Joey returned from school. He came through the door, sweaty and a bit disheveled from basketball, a streak of relief crossing his features when he saw her waiting. "He's supposed to come at 6, right?" Joey asked, heading straight for the shower. Carla nodded. "Yes, take your time. I'll order some pizza if that's all right. Didn't think we'd want to fuss with a big meal." "Pizza's perfect," Joey called back over his shoulder, disappearing into the bathroom. For the next hour, Carla found herself pacing the small living room, picking up random items and setting them down again without knowing why. Every now and then, she would peek at the clock, scolding herself for feeling so anxious. This was what Joey wanted, what Nathaniel had asked for, and she had agreed. That didn't mean it would be easy. When the buzzer finally rang a few minutes after 6, Carla's pulse throbbed in her ears. She opened the door, and there stood Nathaniel in a crisp shirt and jeans, somehow managing to look both polished and oddly vulnerable. He offered a tentative smile as he stepped inside, carrying a large paper bag in his right hand. "I brought some pastries," he said. "I wasn't sure what Joey liked, but these are from a bakery downtown. Figured it couldn't hurt to have something sweet for later." Carla tried to return his smile. "Thanks. That's thoughtful." Nathaniel nodded, glancing around at the well-worn furniture and family photos on the walls. She could practically feel him measuring the distance between his world and hers. 15 years of separation, condensed into one tiny apartment. Joey emerged from his bedroom wearing clean clothes and an expression that wavered between curiosity and caution. "Hey," he greeted quietly, positioning himself a few steps away. "Thanks for coming." Nathaniel swallowed, clearly trying to keep his composure. "Thank you for letting me," he replied. "Your mom said pizza would be here soon, so I hope you're hungry." It was an awkward dance at first, punctuated by uncertain glances and half-formed sentences that died on the tip of the tongue. Carla busied herself tidying the coffee table, even though it was already neat, while Joey remained standing, arms folded. Nathaniel cleared his throat, looking around for a neutral topic to break the tension. "You play basketball?" he asked, his gaze flicking to the pair of sneakers near the door. Joey nodded. "Yeah, forward. I'm not the tallest on the team, but I'm quick. I started last year, and I got pretty into it." Nathaniel smiled, something genuine warming his features. "I used to love watching basketball when I was in college. Couldn't play to save my life, though." The small admission seemed to ease Joey's posture a fraction. Before he could respond, the door buzzer sounded again. Carla went to let the delivery driver in, returning with 2 large pizza boxes. They gathered around the narrow dining table, each one pulling out a paper plate while Carla offered a pitcher of lemonade from the fridge. The cramped space forced them to sit closer than any of them might have liked, but in a way, That closeness became a gentle push to speak. They ate mostly in silence at first, each one uncertain how to navigate the unspoken questions. Finally, Joey looked up from his slice and met Nathaniel's eye. "Mom told me you didn't know about me," he said. His tone was careful, not accusing, but also not entirely accepting. Nathaniel nodded, setting his pizza down. "I swear I didn't," he murmured. "I would have come back if I'd known. I was immature then, too focused on my own goals, but I never would have ignored you." Joey studied him, searching for signs of deceit. "So," he said, choosing his words as though they might detonate if placed incorrectly, "what do you do now? Mom said you're a CEO?" Nathaniel leaned back, wiping his hands on a napkin. "I run a tech company. We started out small, developing custom software, but we grew fast. Now we have offices in 3 cities and partner with bigger corporations. That's what brought me to Pineview. I'm talking with an investor who wants to build a new data center nearby." Carla listened to Nathaniel's explanation with a pang of déjà vu. Even when they were young, he spoke about his ambitions with that same measured clarity. She remembered days at the community college library, where he'd pore over spreadsheets and business guides while she flipped through her own textbooks. She swallowed past the sudden lump in her throat, reminding herself to focus on the present. "How long will you be in Pineview?" Joey asked, eyes flicking to Carla, as though wondering if she was dreading his next words. Nathaniel considered. "A week or 2, depending on how negotiations go. After that, I'll be traveling back and forth for a while. The investor is serious about setting up shop here." Joey nodded, the wheels turning in his head. "So, you're going to be around for a bit?" Nathaniel offered a small smile, looking almost shy. "If you'll allow it. I'd like to see you more, get to know you better, and maybe I could come watch one of your basketball practices, if that's all right." Carla's stomach clenched at the fragile hope in Nathaniel's tone. She glanced at Joey. He had every right to refuse, to keep Nathaniel at arm's length. But he only shrugged, though his eyes revealed a spark of something like curiosity. "I guess that'd be okay," he said, and Carla's breath eased in relief. They finished dinner with a bit more conversation, each question peeling back the layers of time that had separated them. Carla found herself interjecting small tidbits, how Joey used to climb the counters when he was a toddler, or how he had developed a taste for spicy food last summer. Nathaniel hung on every word, and she saw the flickers of regret cross his face each time he realized just how much he'd missed. When the last slice was gone, Carla scooped up plates and cups. Nathaniel insisted on helping, which resulted in their elbows bumping at the sink. She felt a swirl of memories surge, but she forced them aside. They could not go back to who they'd been, only forward in whatever shape the future decided. Joey lingered in the doorway, uncertain about how to end the evening. Eventually, Nathaniel wiped his hands on a dish towel and turned to him, clearing his throat. "I'll let you both get some rest. But if it's okay, maybe I can pick you up after practice on Friday? Take you to that new sports shop downtown, see if you need better sneakers?" Joey hesitated, then nodded. "That sounds good." A soft hush settled over them. Carla said nothing, aware of how delicate this moment was. Nathaniel offered Joey a gentle nod, then gathered his coat and left. The door clicked behind him, and for a moment Carla and Joey stood frozen, absorbing the shift in the atmosphere. Finally, Joey exhaled. "That wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be," he admitted, though uncertainty still shadowed his expression. "I don't know how I feel about all this, but I guess I can keep talking to him." Carla wrapped an arm around his shoulder, drawing him close. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, "no matter what you decide." They cleaned up in companionable silence. When Carla finally collapsed onto the couch, she felt drained yet strangely relieved. Maybe it wouldn't be easy, and maybe heartbreak still lurked. But for the first time in ages, she believed that a flicker of hope might be worth the risk. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like this story, and share it with friends. After that evening, an odd calm took hold in Carla's apartment. She and Joey tiptoed around the new shape of their days, as though testing the floorboards of a house they weren't sure could bear their weight. Nathaniel had promised to pick Joey up on Friday after basketball practice, and Carla found herself counting down to that moment with a blend of trepidation and hope. She wanted her son to have the family he deserved, but anxiety gnawed at her in the quiet moments. What if Nathaniel vanished again the instant things got complicated? When Friday afternoon arrived, Carla left work early to meet Joey at school. She positioned herself near the chain-link fence that enclosed the basketball courts, the chilly autumn wind whipping strands of her hair across her face. From her vantage point, she watched the sweaty scramble of teenage boys dribbling and passing. Joey moved with an ease that surprised her, weaving between teammates and opponents with the same quiet determination he brought to everything in life. Practice ended with a shrill whistle and the boys dispersed to the benches. Carla waved to Joey. He lifted his hand in a small greeting, his expression a mixture of pride and self-consciousness at seeing his mother near his peers. When he jogged over, she handed him a bottle of water and a towel. "Thanks," he panted, catching his breath. "He's supposed to meet me near the gym. You staying?" Carla studied him for a moment, noticing how tall he looked against the sunlit court. She bit her lip. "I'll head home," she said quietly. "You two can do your thing. Call if you need me." He nodded, taking a quick sip of water. She gave his shoulder a squeeze and slipped away, trusting that he would be all right. These next steps were his to take. Every protective instinct in her screamed to hover nearby, but she knew she had to give him space. It was a hard lesson, but one motherhood had forced upon her time and again. Back at the apartment, she tried to distract herself by tidying up. She rearranged books on the shelf, wiped down the kitchen counters, and even attempted to organize a stray stack of junk mail on the coffee table. Her phone remained within arm's reach, silent as the minutes ticked by. Each time it lit up with some spam notification, her heart lurched, only to subside in disappointment when no call or text from Joey appeared. Finally, around 6:30, Joey's key rattled in the lock. She spun around to see him step inside, carrying a small shopping bag. His cheeks were flushed and a half-smile tugged at his mouth. "How was it?" she asked, trying to sound casual. He tossed his backpack onto a chair. "It was okay," he said, shrugging. "He took me to this sports shop downtown like he said. We looked at shoes. He offered to buy me a pair, but I felt weird letting him pay, so we split the cost. He got me these, though." Joey set the shopping bag on the floor and pulled out a pair of shiny black athletic shoes. Carla recognized the brand, expensive but well-made. She crouched to inspect them, an odd swirl of pride and apprehension churning in her stomach. It was a fatherly gesture, but after so many years, it felt almost surreal to see Nathaniel providing for Joey in any way. "Nice," she murmured. "I'm glad you worked out a compromise." Joey nodded, placing the shoes back in the bag. Then he straightened up, glancing at her with unguarded eyes. "We talked some," he went on, fiddling with the edge of the bag. "He asked about school, what classes I like. I asked about his job, and he told me about all these people who work under him, how he's in charge of big decisions. It was kinda cool, I guess." A pause. "He said he wants to come to one of my games." Carla smiled softly. "You okay with that?" He let out a measured breath. "I think so. It's just weird, you know. My friends are gonna ask who he is, and if I say he's my dad, they'll be like, 'Where's he been all this time?'" She reached out, gently laying a hand on his forearm. "You don't owe anyone an explanation," she said. "Tell them only what you're comfortable sharing. The rest, That's our business." He gave a small nod, tension easing from his shoulders. He asked if we could get dinner again sometime. "With you too." Carla's chest constricted. She forced a casual tone. "Sure," she managed, "if that's what you want." Joey studied her face, as though trying to gauge her true feelings. After a moment, he returned the shoes to their box and stood up. "I'm gonna grab a snack," he said. "Want anything?" She shook her head, watching him disappear into the kitchen. In his absence, the silence pressed in. Another tiny step forward, she told herself. They were building a connection between father and son that should have existed all along, yet she couldn't shake the fear that it would all topple if Nathaniel discovered fatherhood was more demanding than a few friendly outings. The next week passed in small increments of progress. Carla found herself exchanging polite but guarded texts with Nathaniel about practical matters, the schedule of Joey's next game, suggestions for a decent diner meal, even a quick update about Joey's math test. Nathaniel responded promptly, always with a tone of gratitude for being kept in the loop. She noticed a shift in Joey as well. He was quieter, thinking more deeply about things, but his eyes lit up sometimes when he mentioned Nathaniel's name. That spark of curiosity and cautious hope reminded Carla of how she'd felt at his age, teetering between excitement for the unknown and fear of being hurt. One afternoon, Carla had just finished a busy shift at the diner when she spotted Nathaniel's sleek car parked outside. He stood on the curb, scanning the street as if looking for her. A pang of panic rippled through her chest. She hadn't expected him, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for a face-to-face conversation without Joey around as a buffer. But she squared her shoulders, stepped outside, and approached him. He gave a small wave, looking slightly uncomfortable beneath his polished exterior. "Hi," he said. "I was nearby for a meeting. Thought I'd see if you had a minute." She glanced around, noticing one of the line cooks peering curiously from the back window of the diner. "Sure," she replied, trying to disguise her nerves. "I've got a few minutes before I have to pick up Joey." Nathaniel nodded and gestured toward a bench beneath a modest awning. They sat down, leaving a careful space between them. He laced his fingers together, exhaling like a man preparing for a delicate pitch. "I wanted to ask you something," he began, gaze flicking from the passing cars back to her. "I've been reading up on Pineview, trying to get a sense of what it's like for a kid growing up here. I know your life hasn't been easy. Working long hours, raising Joey on your own, I thought maybe there was a way I could help, beyond just being there for him. Like with his schooling." Carla stiffened, her pride kicking in. She hated the idea of accepting charity from anyone, even if that someone was Joey's father. "We're managing," she said carefully. "He's got the classes he needs. Plus, there's a scholarship program he can apply to if he wants to go to college." Nathaniel nodded slowly. "I don't doubt you've handled everything well. It's clear Joey's an amazing kid. But if he wants to go to a bigger university, or if he needs any resources, tutors, extracurricular programs, I can provide that." She forced herself to remain calm. "He hasn't mentioned any interest in transferring, if that's what you mean. We've talked about college in a broad sense, but we're taking it one step at a time." Nathaniel leaned forward, sincerity etched into his features. "I don't want to overstep, Carla. I really don't. But I've missed almost his entire childhood. If there's anything I can do to give him an advantage in life, I'd like to do it." A flicker of emotion rose in her chest, a mix of gratitude and wariness. "I appreciate the gesture," she said at last, brushing a stray hair from her face. "Truly. But let's not push him. He's adjusting as it is." Nathaniel nodded. For a moment, the tension between them softened into something almost companionable. She recalled how they'd first met at a college fair, both wide-eyed at the possibilities of the future. Back then, life had felt wide open. Yet the years had not gone as planned, and the gulf between them now was filled with unspoken regrets. He checked his watch and stood. "I won't keep you. I just wanted you to know I'm here if you need me, in any capacity." Carla rose too, hugging her arms around herself in the brisk air. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I'll keep that in mind." They parted ways with a polite nod. As Carla walked toward the bus stop, she mulled over his offer. A chance for Joey to soar beyond the limitations of Pineview. She felt a twist of longing for the life she'd once imagined, where she and Nathaniel chased dreams together. Could they in some way still offer Joey the opportunities that once eluded them both? That evening, when she relayed the conversation to Joey in broad strokes, he listened with an unreadable expression. "So he's basically offering to pay for my future, right?" he asked after a moment of silence. Carla frowned. "It's not that simple. He just wants to help if you need it. No one's forcing anything on you." Joey paced the small living room, glancing at the row of pictures on the shelf. Carla holding him as a toddler, beaming. I guess we'll see," he mumbled. "It's all so weird, Mom. One minute I was fine with how things were, and now he's here talking about big plans for me." She wanted to tell him that people only got one father, and sometimes you had to let yourself trust even when you felt terrified. But she bit the words back. He was old enough to forge his own opinions, and her job was to stand behind him. She gave him a wobbly smile. "Yeah, we'll figure it out together." For now, that was enough. They didn't have to make big decisions yet. Step by step, they'd navigate this new reality, taking care not to let the fragile bridges between them collapse. As she watched Joey retreat to his bedroom, shoes in hand, Carla reminded herself that every day without Nathaniel had taught them both resilience. Perhaps now, in the quiet cracks of their lives, there was room for something more, a father's guidance, a renewed sense of hope, and maybe, if they were lucky, a chance to heal all those lonely years. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like this story, and share it with friends. Carla woke on a Saturday morning to the soft patter of rain against the window. Her first thought was relief. She had the day off and Joey wasn't due at any basketball practice. For once, they could spend a lazy morning together without the rush of school or the hum of the diner's grill in her ears. She pictured them making pancakes, maybe indulging in a funny movie later. But as she rolled over, she caught sight of her phone on the nightstand, remembering how each day seemed to bring some new shift in the tenuous arrangement with Nathaniel. Tucking away her unease, she slipped out of bed and padded to the kitchen, determined to create a little peace before the storm of emotions could brew. Joey was already awake, sprawled in the living room with a game controller in hand. He had the volume turned low so as not to wake her. His hair was a messy tangle, and he wore a faded t-shirt with the name of some random sports camp she'd signed him up for one summer. He glanced up when she entered, giving a small smile that warmed her heart. "Morning, Mom," he said, pausing the game. "I was just trying to beat this level before you got up." Carla returned his smile and sank onto the couch beside him. "Hey, kiddo. You hungry? I was thinking pancakes." Joey's eyes lit up, but he set the controller down and shifted, a crease forming between his eyebrows. "I'm starving," he admitted. "But before we do that, can I ask you something?" His voice carried the hint of anxiety he so often tried to hide. Carla leaned forward. "Of course." He rubbed a hand over his knee as though bracing himself. "So, Nathaniel texted me last night. Said he's working on this local youth program for his company, like a volunteer initiative where employees help run after-school clubs or teach coding workshops." He paused, glancing at her expression. "He asked if I'd be interested in checking it out. I guess he's planning to partner with the high school or something." Carla absorbed his words with measured calm. She had known in the back of her mind that Nathaniel would begin to weave himself into the community in ways that might affect Joey. That was natural for someone so driven, but it still startled her. "What did you tell him?" Joey hesitated. "I said maybe. It sounds kinda cool, right? Learning about computers and stuff. I'm not sure if it's something I'd love, but it doesn't hurt to see what it's about." She nodded, doing her best not to let her own reservations overshadow his curiosity. "If you're interested, then yes, it's worth a look. Just keep me in the loop, okay? If it ever feels like too much or if he's pressuring you, we'll address it." He blew out a breath, relief evident. "Thanks, Mom. I appreciate you trusting me. It's just weird to have a dad who, wants to do all these things. I'm not used to it." Carla placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Neither am I," she confessed. "But that doesn't mean we can't give it a try." They made pancakes together, sifting flour and cracking eggs while a light drizzle tapped steadily on the window. The cozy smell of batter cooking filled the apartment, and they joked about who made the fluffiest pancake. For a little while, the world felt simpler, like it had before Nathaniel's reappearance. Yet underneath it all, Carla sensed that silent undercurrent of possibility. Her son standing at the threshold of a life that included both of his parents, if everything held together. After breakfast, Joey settled back onto the couch to resume his game, promising to tackle his homework later. Carla cleared the table, her phone buzzing with a notification. She dried her hands and checked the screen, feeling a little jolt when she saw Nathaniel's name. "Good morning," read the text. "Hope you and Joey are having a nice start to your weekend. Mind if I call later to discuss the youth program details? I might swing by to drop off some brochures." Carla felt torn between a polite refusal and a willingness to see what he had to say. Before she could overthink, her fingers typed a measured response. "Sure, give me a couple of hours. We're just finishing breakfast, then call any time." Setting her phone aside, she marveled at how swiftly they'd fallen into these everyday communications, co-parenting gestures that felt both natural and utterly foreign. She realized with mild unease that she missed the days when her biggest concern was whether Joey's sneakers would hold up for another season. Now everything seemed bigger, more complicated, with the potential for heartbreak if Nathaniel's enthusiasm faded or if she and Joey found it too hard to trust him. Near lunchtime, her phone buzzed again, and this time it was a call. She motioned for Joey to pause his game. He muted the TV and watched as she answered. Nathaniel's voice came through clearly, polite and yet carrying a subdued warmth. "Hey, Carla," he said. "I hope I'm not interrupting." She glanced at Joey, who gave a small nod as if to say he was fine with it. "You're not," she replied. "We're just hanging out at home." "Good," he said. "Listen, I have some brochures and a quick presentation for the after-school program, and I'd love to give you two a look. Get your input before I finalize it with the school board." Carla leaned against the kitchen counter. "I'm guessing you want to drop by?" she asked. "If it's not an inconvenience," Nathaniel said. "Otherwise, I can email. But I thought it might be nicer to discuss it in person, and maybe I can answer any questions Joey has." She glanced out the window at the still falling rain. This was new territory, inviting him into her home outside of the carefully managed dinners or planned meetings. Yet perhaps that was exactly what needed to happen if they were ever going to integrate him into Joey's life more naturally. "Okay," she agreed. "We'll be here." Nathaniel arrived about an hour later, stepping in from the drizzle with a neatly folded umbrella and a messenger bag slung over his shoulder. He wore casual clothes, dark jeans, a soft sweater, and Carla realized it was the first time she'd seen him out of business attire since he'd come back. The effect was slightly disarming, as if glimpsing the youthful version of him she'd once known. "Hey," Joey said, standing awkwardly in the living room doorway. You can put your umbrella by the coat rack, I guess." "Thanks," Nathaniel replied with a slight grin. "Sorry to barge in. At least I come bearing gifts. He patted the messenger bag. I have some samples of the program schedule and an outline of how I'm pitching it to the school board. Carla gestured for him to sit on the couch. Nathaniel obliged, and Joey plopped down on the opposite end, tucking his legs beneath him. Carla chose the armchair, keeping a little distance, though she tried to project warmth. Nathaniel carefully removed a stack of papers from his bag and passed them to Joey. This program is something my company's wanted to start in a few small towns, he explained. We plan to have employees volunteer as mentors in coding, robotics, even small-scale business management. It's not all technology. Some kids might want to learn about entrepreneurship, budgeting, or even marketing strategies. The idea is to encourage students to explore different interests without the pressure of formal grades. Joey flipped through the brochures, eyebrows lifted in genuine intrigue. So it's like free classes after school? Nathaniel nodded. Yes. We'd bring in laptops and equipment, help you build small projects, and maybe even create a club that competes in regional tournaments. The good thing is you can just show up and see how you like it. No one's forcing you to stick around if it's not your thing. Carla watched Joey's face, noticing the faint spark in his eyes. He was always so curious, always tinkering with new ideas. You'd actually do all that here in Pineview? She asked, shifting her attention to Nathaniel. This is a small town, so big corporate programs usually skip over us. Nathaniel's gaze flickered with a hint of pride. That's exactly why I pushed for it. Small towns get overlooked, and I have reasons now to invest in Pineview's future. He glanced at Joey. If it goes well, maybe we can expand the offerings. Joey nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. I'd like to try it. Could be fun to learn coding or something that's different from normal classes. I never thought about it before. Nathaniel relaxed, a subtle sigh escaping him. That's great, he murmured. I'm glad you're open to it. I'll let the board know there's interest from students like you. Carla set her elbows on her knees, leaning forward. You said you wanted our input. Is there anything specific you wanted to ask or show us? Nathaniel pulled out another sheet, this one a short questionnaire. We're doing a small survey to see which areas kids might like best. Feel free to fill it out or just tell me. If we find out a bunch of students love game design, we'll tailor the program. If others want to do small robotics projects, we'll go that route. Joey stared at the paper, an uncertain smile tugging at his lips. Game design would be cool, he said, tapping a pen against the margin. But I also think robotics sounds awesome. Maybe I'll check both boxes. Carla couldn't help but smile at his excitement. You really love basketball, but I've always wondered if there was something else that might grab your attention. Maybe this is your chance. Nathaniel looked between them, a brief flash of contentment crossing his face. Thanks for letting me come by, he said. I know our relationship is still fragile. I want to be sure you both know I'm serious about being present, not just for show. Carla nodded, feeling an unexpected twinge of sympathy. She could see he was trying, and it wasn't just about impressing them. The humility in his voice reminded her of the boy she once knew, the one who would sit on the floor of her dorm room, scribbling business ideas in a notebook, hoping to make something of himself. Before she could say anything else, Joey reached into the pile of brochures. So, when do these sessions start? The sign-up sheet says spring semester. Is that set in stone? That's the plan, Nathaniel answered. If the board approves it, we'd kick off in early March. Might do a pilot program sooner if we can get enough volunteers. Joey nodded. Cool, I'll mention it to some friends at school. I know a couple of them would be into this. They chatted a bit longer, the conversation flowing easier than usual. Nathaniel stayed for about an hour, going over minor details and gleaning feedback from Joey's perspective as a student. Carla mostly observed, offering a comment here and there but letting father and son connect. The faint patter of rain against the window created a soothing backdrop, as if the outside world had hushed to allow them this moment of fragile unity. Eventually, Nathaniel glanced at his watch and stood, gathering the brochures. "I should go," he said. "Thank you again." He turned to Joey. "Text me if you come up with more ideas or if your friends have questions. I'll probably see you at your next game, too." Joey nodded, returning a small smile. "Yeah, I will." Carla walked Nathaniel to the door, holding it open as he stepped out into the hallway. He paused, looking back at her. For a moment, neither spoke, and she sensed the weight of gratitude mingled with regret in his silence. Finally, he whispered, "Thank you," and then left, footsteps fading down the corridor. When Carla closed the door, she found Joey standing behind her, arms folded. "I might sound dumb," he said quietly, "but I actually like talking with him. It feels like he's, trying." She brushed his hair affectionately. "That doesn't sound dumb at all," she replied. "He is trying. We just need to keep honest with each other." Joey nodded, casting one last glance at the brochures on the couch. Then, as though deciding he'd dwelled enough on serious matters, he disappeared into his room, tossing a casual, "Thanks, Mom," over his shoulder. Carla lingered in the living room for a moment, letting the hush envelop her. Outside, the rain continued. A wave of cautious optimism flowed through her. Yes, the situation was delicate, but she had just witnessed a glimpse of genuine warmth between father and son. Perhaps they were on the brink of something real, something that might mend old scars, even if it took time. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like this story, and share it with friends. Over the next few days, Carla found herself balancing an odd mixture of excitement and caution. On the one hand, she was grateful that Nathaniel's presence had begun to spark joy in Joey's life. On the other hand, old memories kept her on edge. She remembered how, in the early days of their romance, he would make grand promises about the future, only to dash those visions when the lure of opportunity swept him away. She told herself that they were both older now, more grounded in reality, but doubt refused to release its hold entirely. She caught glimpses of the old Nathaniel in his text messages, a man who believed in big plans, big gestures, and the unwavering pursuit of dreams. Had he learned to slow down and truly stay? Each question buzzed in her mind like a restless wasp. On Monday evening, Carla found herself preparing dinner while Joey studied at the kitchen table. She couldn't help but notice how he kept checking his phone, a habit he hadn't developed until recently. It was obvious he was waiting to hear from Nathaniel, who had mentioned dropping by a school board meeting that afternoon. Joey pretended not to care, but Carla recognized the spark of anticipation in his eyes. She stirred the pot of tomato soup, remembering how fatherhood had once seemed a distant notion to Nathaniel. Now it was right here, in their home, taking shape through late-night messages and quiet gestures of support. She wondered if this fragile bond might deepen without another painful break. Each clang of the wooden spoon against the pot felt like a reminder of how delicate all of this remained. After dinner, Joey retreated to his room, phone in hand. Carla settled on the couch, half watching a reality show about home renovations. She couldn't stop glancing at her own phone, though no messages came from Nathaniel. She found herself torn between relief and disappointment, unsettled by how quickly she was becoming accustomed to his presence. A part of her longed for a stable connection, something that might fill the void she rarely admitted existed. Another part warned her to keep her guard up. She tried to picture a future where Nathaniel dropped by regularly, attending Joey's games and taking them both out for a celebratory dinner afterward. But imagining that also awakened memories of heartbreak, reminders that a well-intentioned promise could vanish under enough pressure. She sighed, muting the TV as the weight of uncertainty pressed down. Tuesday arrived with crisp autumn sunshine, and Carla trudged to work under swirling orange leaves. The diner was unusually busy before lunch, a small conference in town drawing out-of-state visitors. She bustled between tables, refilling coffee cups and balancing plates of waffles and omelets. Yet even in the rush, her mind wandered to Joey's new sense of anticipation and how Nathaniel would factor into it all. At one point, she noticed a tall figure by the counter, her heart jolting briefly until she realized it wasn't Nathaniel. Disappointment flickered. Shaking her head, she focused on her duties. She refused to become that person who hovered by the door, waiting for someone who might never arrive. When her shift ended, she slipped out the back, relieved to feel the sun on her face. She and Joey had agreed to meet later for a simple dinner at home. That evening, Carla found Joey sitting in the living room with his laptop open, poring over some videos about coding. He looked up excitedly when she walked in, gesturing for her to see. "Mom, check this out," he said, pointing to the screen. "Nathaniel sent me these links. They're tutorials on building simple games. I actually got something to work." Carla peered over his shoulder, watching a rudimentary character move across a pixelated landscape every time Joey pressed a key. It was basic, but the delight on his face was real. "That's amazing," she said, ruffling his hair. "You're really picking it up fast." He shrugged, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. "It's fun. I never thought about computers much before, but this makes me think maybe I could do something with it. I'm kind of surprised he actually took the time to send me these links." Carla felt a surge of conflicting emotions. She was glad Nathaniel had followed through, investing time in Joey's interests. Yet it reminded her how much she had navigated alone during Joey's early years. She thought of the countless days she worked double shifts at the diner just to afford secondhand clothes and a decent meal. Now, with a few keystrokes, Nathaniel could offer opportunities Carla had never been able to imagine. Part of her bristled at that power imbalance, but another part felt relieved. If Nathaniel truly stayed in Joey's life, perhaps Joey wouldn't have to struggle the way she had. She forced herself to smile, pushing back her misgivings. "He seems serious about all this," she said. "You're learning something valuable, and that's what matters." Joey nodded, returning his attention to the screen. For the rest of the night, Carla caught herself glancing over from time to time, heart full of cautious hope. Midweek brought an unexpected development when a knock sounded at their door on a Wednesday afternoon. Carla, freshly off a shift, opened it to find a neatly dressed woman with poised features and a polished tone. "Hello," the woman began, extending a business card. "I'm Rebecca Lynn, Nathaniel's assistant. He asked me to drop by and deliver some documents regarding the youth program partnership." Carla blinked, unsure how to respond as Rebecca swept past, placing a slim folder on the small dining table. "He's in meetings today," Rebecca continued, "but he wanted you to have these forms in case Joey wants to sign up early. There's also a note for him." Carla glanced at the papers, feeling a mix of gratitude and bemusement. "Thanks," she managed. Rebecca offered a polite smile. "My pleasure. Mr. Rhodes speaks very highly of Joey." With that, she left, leaving Carla momentarily speechless. After Rebecca departed, Carla flipped open the folder. Inside were neatly typed forms outlining the program's schedule, liability waivers, and an introductory letter welcoming participants. Tucked between the pages was a handwritten note. "Joey, hope these details help you decide. Don't feel pressured. I'm here if you have questions. Nathaniel." Carla traced her finger over the neat script, remembering a time when he would leave her similar notes, folded in the margins of her textbooks. There was something deeply personal about a handwritten message, a reminder that not all connections were digital. When Joey got home, she showed him the folder and the note. He read Nathaniel's words in silence, an odd glow in his eyes. "He really wants me in this program," he murmured. "I guess it's nice to feel wanted." Carla set a hand on his shoulder. "You are wanted," she said, voice tight with emotion. In the days that followed, Carla found herself drifting between guarded relief and apprehension. She watched Joey gain confidence, his curiosity fueled by Nathaniel's encouragement. Still, she wrestled with her own memories, each one a reminder of how quickly trust could be broken. She resolved not to stand in her son's way, even if that meant living with a perpetual lump in her throat. Perhaps, she told herself, this was her chance too. A chance to let go of old resentments and trust that people could change. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, she stood at the diner window, gazing at puddles collecting along the street, and wondered if hope might outweigh her fears. The shape of their lives was shifting, and for better or worse, they were moving forward together, one tentative step at a time. She only prayed it would last. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like this story, and share it with friends. Carla arrived at the diner early Friday morning, the stale smell of old coffee and frying bacon clinging to her uniform as she set about prepping the day's specials. Even though her shift officially started at 6, she liked coming in a half hour beforehand, when the world felt quiet enough to think. Lately, however, her thoughts had been anything but soothing. She sliced through a stack of bagels, her mind returning to the swirl of changes that had taken hold of her life. Tomorrow, Joey was set to have his first official meeting with the youth program volunteers, and Nathaniel had promised to be there to introduce him to some of the mentors. She pictured Joey's mixture of excitement and nerves, recalling how he'd laid out his sneakers the night before, making sure there wasn't a single smudge. She felt pride bloom in her chest every time she thought about how far Joey had come. A year ago, he'd never have volunteered for an after-school club, let alone a technology program that had him researching coding tutorials online. He'd kept to himself, certain that anything too far outside the ordinary wasn't meant for him. Now, with Nathaniel's encouragement, Joey seemed more open to possibilities. Carla didn't want to credit Nathaniel solely, though. She'd spent years guiding Joey in her own way, and perhaps this was the natural progression of a curious mind. But she couldn't deny Nathaniel had played a role in fanning that spark. By the time the diner's first patrons arrived, Carla had arranged the pastries and readied the coffee maker. The early rush came in bursts, truckers passing through, bleary-eyed travelers off the highway, and the occasional local craving a hot meal before work. She greeted them all with a polite smile, weaving between tables with practiced grace. The busyness kept her from dwelling on the questions lurking at the edges of her consciousness. Did Nathaniel truly plan to stick around once the youth program was up and running, or was this just a short-term burst of enthusiasm? She found herself replaying the last conversation they'd had, when he spoke of forging new ties in Pineview. His voice had brimmed with sincerity, but she remembered the day he'd left Pineview so many years ago, just as sure of his plans and unafraid to cast aside anything that stood in his way. Shortly before noon, Carla noticed a familiar figure slipping inside. Harriet, an older woman who lived down the block, was known for her chatty nature. She and Carla had formed a casual friendship over the years, marked by Harriet's frequent visits for coffee and a pastry. Harriet took a seat at the counter and smiled warmly as Carla approached with a fresh pot of coffee. "Heard you've been busy with a certain out-of-towner," Harriet teased lightly. Not every day a big-shot CEO's spotted around Pineview. Carla felt her cheeks warm. "Word travels fast," she murmured, pouring the coffee. She liked Harriet, but the older woman had a way of gently extracting secrets. Harriet gave a knowing nod, stirring in a generous spoonful of sugar. "Small town," she said. "We feed on gossip. But I'm happy for you, dear. Must be nice to have that boy's father taking an interest at last." Carla forced a polite smile, keeping her voice subdued. "We'll see how it goes," she replied, not wanting to fan the flames. Harriet patted her hand gently. "I wish you both the best," she said, sipping her coffee. Carla nodded, offering a small thanks before retreating to refill someone else's cup. The last thing she needed was the whole town peering into her private affairs. She'd been a single mother for so long that she knew how quickly compassion could turn to meddling. After her shift ended, Carla headed home, her steps quick against the pavement. She wanted to catch Joey before he rushed off to meet friends, hoping to check in on how he felt about tomorrow's big day. Inside their apartment, she found him sprawled on the couch, fiddling with his phone. She slung her purse onto a chair. "You doing okay?" she asked. "It's almost the weekend, and you've got that orientation for the program tomorrow." Joey nodded. "I'm excited," he admitted, then glanced up. "Nervous, too. I've never done anything like this. Mr. Peterson, my teacher, mentioned that a couple of other kids from school are joining. I guess that's good." Carla moved to sit by him, noticing a faint tremble in his knee. "It's okay to be anxious," she said softly. "Remember, if you don't like it, or if it's too overwhelming, there's no shame in stepping away." He lowered his eyes. "I know, but I do want to give it a real shot. Nathaniel." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "He texted me last night to say he's proud of me for trying something new. It felt kinda nice, you know?" Carla swallowed a wave of emotions. She and Joey had always shared a close bond, but hearing him speak so freely about Nathaniel stirred up long-buried feelings of regret. She wished she could have spared Joey those years of not knowing his father. At the same time, she feared that if Nathaniel vanished again, Joey would end up more hurt than before. She forced a reassuring smile. "I'm glad," she managed. "If it makes you happy, that's all that matters." That night, after Joey drifted off to bed, Carla found herself wide awake, staring at the muted glow of the street lamp through her curtains. She replayed Harriet's remark in her head. Must be nice to have that boy's father taking an interest at last. It was, she admitted. Despite her worries, she couldn't deny the sense of relief that came with sharing the load, even in a small way. For years, she had been everything: provider, protector, confidant. Now she had someone else stepping in, someone who could help Joey see a world beyond Pineview, if only that someone wasn't the same man who had once shattered her heart. She shifted under the sheets, eventually dozing off with images of Joey's uncertain smile filling her dreams. Saturday morning arrived with crisp air and brilliant sunshine, a perfect day for new beginnings. Carla woke to the sound of Joey rummaging in the kitchen, presumably grabbing a quick breakfast before heading to the orientation. She found him at the table, nibbling on toast and scrolling through messages on his phone. He looked up when she entered, eyes alight with excitement. "Morning," he said. "Nathaniel's picking me up in half an hour. We're going to the community center first. Then he said we'll head to the school if there's time." Carla grabbed a coffee mug, pouring herself a quick fix of caffeine. "That's great," she said, fighting to keep any nervous quiver from her tone. "You sure you don't want me to drop you off?" He shook his head. "Nathaniel offered, and I figured it'd give us a chance to talk. You don't mind, right?" She forced a smile. "Not at all. I want you to be comfortable." Inside, her heart fluttered. She felt superfluous, overshadowed. But she reminded herself that this day was about Joey's growth, not her insecurities. Within the hour, a soft knock sounded at the door. Carla inhaled, bracing herself. She opened it to find Nathaniel standing there, dappled sunlight catching in his hair. He smiled, though a hint of uncertainty lingered in his eyes. "Hey," he said quietly. "Ready, Joey?" Joey grabbed his backpack, nodding eagerly. Carla noticed how father and son both stood in the doorway, their matching posture and subtle similarity in features suddenly very obvious. Nathaniel gave Carla a polite nod. "Would you like to come along?" he asked, as if sensing the tension. "You're welcome to join us. See how the orientation goes." Carla wavered. A part of her wanted to see firsthand how these workshops were introduced, how Joey would interact with the mentors. But another part urged her to let them have this moment, father and son figuring each other out without her hovering. "I have a few errands," she lied, though the only thing on her schedule was laundry. "But thanks, I'll catch up with you both later." She stepped aside as Joey followed Nathaniel into the hallway. They exchanged a few final words about the day, and then they were gone. Carla closed the door, leaning her forehead against the wood. It felt strange to relinquish control, to trust that everything would be all right without her presence. She filled the next few hours with mundane tasks, cleaning the bathroom, putting away laundry, reorganizing the bookshelf. Despite her best attempts to distract herself, worry tugged at the corners of her mind. What if Joey hated the orientation? What if Nathaniel said something reckless or made a promise he couldn't keep? Time dragged, and by early afternoon, Carla's nerves had reached a taut edge. Finally, her phone buzzed. She snatched it up, relief flooding her when she saw Joey's name. "Hey, Mom," came his voice brimming with excitement. It was awesome. They had a bunch of laptops set up, and these mentors showed us how to code simple graphics. I made a little animation that played across the screen. He sounded breathless, words tumbling over each other. Carla felt a smile break across her face, the tension loosening. "That's amazing, honey," she said. "I'm so proud of you. Where are you now?" Joey answered. "Nathaniel's taking me to grab lunch. I just wanted to let you know I'm having a blast. We'll be home soon. Is that okay?" Carla nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Of course. Enjoy yourself." She hung up, feeling a swirl of relief and envy. She reminded herself that this was what she wanted, for Joey to find new passions, for him to trust that Nathaniel could be part of his world. If it hurt a little to be on the outside, that was a small price to pay for her son's growing happiness. She spent the next hour tidying the already clean kitchen, checking her phone more times than she cared to admit. Finally, the front door opened, and in walked Joey, face glowing, trailed by Nathaniel carrying a small bag of takeout. "Hey, Carla," Nathaniel said. "We thought we'd bring you something. Joey said you love these spring rolls from that Thai place across town." Carla blinked, touched by the gesture. "That's very thoughtful," she murmured, accepting the bag. Joey babbled on about the orientation, describing every detail with a zeal that made Carla grin. Nathaniel looked on with a content expression, as if seeing the result of his efforts gave him as much satisfaction as it gave Joey. As they settled into the living room, Joey spread out the program flyers, pointing out the upcoming schedule. Carla listened, enthralled by his enthusiasm. Occasionally, she caught Nathaniel's eye, and something unspoken passed between them. An acknowledgement of the moment, a silent promise to keep nurturing what they'd begun. For once, Carla allowed herself to hope that maybe it was possible to trust this man again, if only for Joey's sake. She'd stand by, watch carefully, and see if he truly meant to stay. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like this story, and share it with friends. Over the next couple of weeks, Carla noticed small shifts in her household that caught her by surprise. Joey seemed happier, quicker to smile when he walked through the door after school, and more willing to chat about random details of his day. He still tackled his homework alone at the kitchen table, but she sensed a new energy in the air. Sometimes she'd hear him laugh softly in his room, phone in hand, and know he was trading messages with Nathaniel. That gentle hum of excitement in her son gave her heart a tug, reminding her of how she used to feel whenever Nathaniel had shown up unexpectedly in her younger years. One Friday evening, Carla and Joey returned from grocery shopping just in time to see Nathaniel's car pulling up to the curb. A swirl of crisp autumn leaves trailed behind the tires. Carla blinked, momentarily taken aback, but Joey's face lit up as he spotted his father stepping onto the sidewalk. Nathaniel offered a casual wave, then jogged over to help carry a few bags. Carla's first instinct was to protest. She hated feeling like a charity case, but she reminded herself that letting him lend a hand was part of learning to share responsibilities. "I didn't know you were coming by," she said, opening the trunk while Joey scooped up a few lightweight bags. Nathaniel shrugged, not unkindly. "I had a meeting canceled last minute, so I thought I'd see if you needed anything. Figured it was a good chance to catch you both before the weekend." Joey beamed. Awesome timing. We just stocked up on groceries." They trudged up the apartment stairs and slipped inside. Carla set the bags on the small kitchen table, glancing at the clock. It was 5:30, and the fading daylight trickled through the curtains. Nathaniel helped unload the groceries without waiting for an invitation, placing produce in the fridge and cereal boxes in the cupboard as though this had been his routine for years. Carla hovered near the sink, uncertain if she should give directions or let him find his own rhythm. Part of her itched at the intimacy of this domestic moment, aware that it felt both natural and deeply strange. When everything was put away, Nathaniel asked, "Any chance you two are free for dinner? I thought we could maybe check out that little Italian place on Main Street. I've heard good things." Joey glanced at Carla, his expression hopeful. She hesitated, torn between wanting to keep her guard high and acknowledging that she had no real reason to say no. "Sure," she finally said. "I've been meaning to try that place, actually." Nathaniel brightened. "Great, my treat. Let me know if I should drive, or we can walk. It's only a few blocks away." Joey's eyes flicked to the door. "Walking sounds nice. The weather's not too cold yet." So the three of them ventured out together, strolling beneath the glow of lampposts. Carla found herself in the middle with Nathaniel and Joey on either side. A light breeze tugged at the edges of her jacket. She listened as father and son chatted about the youth program's recent session, how Joey's group had taken apart an old computer tower to learn its inner workings. The ease of their conversation made her heart ache in a bittersweet way. She was thrilled Joey had found a connection, but couldn't ignore the sting of lost years. By the time they reached the restaurant, Carla's shoulders had relaxed a bit, and she allowed herself to imagine, just for a fleeting moment, that they were like any normal family. The hostess led them to a cozy booth near the back, soft music drifting from hidden speakers in the ceiling. They ordered pasta dishes, and Nathaniel insisted Joey try the house specialty. The way he handled the menu, confidently recommending items as though he'd eaten there before, gave Carla a pang of nostalgia. Nathaniel had always exuded a calm authority, one that attracted people to him as if by gravitational pull. Halfway through dinner, Joey excused himself to the restroom, leaving Carla and Nathaniel alone at the table. She picked at her food, hyper-aware of the lull in conversation. Outside, the sky had deepened to a navy hue, but the restaurant's warm lighting made her feel temporarily cocooned from her worries. Nathaniel cleared his throat. "I've been talking to the investor about finalizing the data center location," he said, keeping his tone low. "If everything goes well, I'll be spending a lot more time here." Carla lifted her gaze. "Really? I thought you'd only be around for a few months." Nathaniel shook his head, setting down his fork. "It's looking more permanent. Of course, I'll still have to travel, but the base of operations might shift to Pineview. We're even scouting office space near the town center." Then he paused, eyes searching her face. "I hope that's not unwelcome news." She swallowed, her pulse quickening. "No, it's not unwelcome, just unexpected. I'm still adjusting." Nathaniel offered a faint smile. "Believe me, so am I." But seeing Joey thrive at the program and realizing that there's a real opportunity to expand my company here, it feels right. Carla nodded, then lowered her eyes. She wanted to believe that he was sincere, that this wasn't just another pit stop before a bigger offer lured him away. But she'd spent too many nights awake with a crying infant cursing Nathaniel's absence to forget that old hurt. Still, she reminded herself, people could change. Joey returned, cheerfully oblivious to the tension swirling under the surface. Dinner resumed with chatter about the local basketball league and the best ways to code a simple artificial intelligence for a game. Carla let the conversation wash over her, content to observe father and son forging something that felt genuine. She even found herself smiling at Nathaniel's jokes, a reluctant warmth blooming in her chest. Afterward, they walked back under a moonlit sky, the sidewalks almost empty. Nathaniel lingered near their apartment building, hesitating as though he wanted to be invited inside again. Joey, full of excitement, tried to coax him up for a bit of TV, but Nathaniel checked his watch and declined politely. "I've got an early call," he explained. "But thanks. Next time, maybe." With a gentle squeeze of Joey's shoulder and a grateful nod to Carla, he headed off, footsteps echoing against the quiet street. The next day, Carla couldn't shake the sense that her life was shifting on an axis she didn't fully control. Harriet's words about second chances ran through her mind. That morning at the diner, Carla found Harriet sipping coffee at the counter once again, that familiar, kindly expression on her face. "You and that boy's father looked mighty content walking down Main Street last night," Harriet said softly, stirring sugar into her cup. Carla stiffened, but there was no judgment in Harriet's voice, only curiosity and maybe a hint of encouragement. "We had dinner," Carla responded, aware that Harriet already knew. "He's staying in town longer than expected. Might even open a branch of his company here." Harriet nodded. "That's good for Pineview, and maybe it's good for you too. We don't choose how life circles back to us." Carla found herself bristling with a mix of gratitude and embarrassment at Harriet's perceptiveness. "I'm taking it day by day," she said. Then, with a tight smile, she moved on to serve another customer. She didn't want to linger on a conversation that exposed all her vulnerable spots. Later at home, Joey beamed as he announced that his next basketball game was only a week away. He tentatively invited Nathaniel via text, and Nathaniel promptly replied that he wouldn't miss it for the world. Carla watched the exchange from a distance, feeling both anxious and proud. It was a small step, a father planning to attend his son's game, but it was also monumental in Joey's eyes. He'd gone from not knowing his father to counting on him in the stands, and Carla silently prayed Nathaniel wouldn't disappoint him. Over the following week, preparations for the game took over the apartment. Joey practiced dribbling drills outside, rummaged through sports websites for tips on footwork, and meticulously laid out his uniform 2 days early. Each time his phone buzzed, Carla would see that glimmer of excitement cross his face, the same expression she used to have when she saw Nathaniel approaching her on campus all those years ago. She decided not to dampen that spark with her own doubts. If Nathaniel was truly here to stay, maybe Joey was exactly the reason he needed to follow through on every promise. The evening before the big game, Carla sat with Joey in the living room, helping him stretch after a final practice session. He was keyed up, already envisioning how the match might go. "You sure you don't mind if he comes?" he asked, sounding both eager and worried. "I know you two have history. Maybe it's uncomfortable." Carla smoothed down the tension in his calf muscle, then looked him in the eye. "Joey, I'm okay with it, really. You deserve every bit of support you can get. I'll be sitting right there next to him, cheering you on." His shoulders relaxed, and he gave her a grateful smile. "Thanks, Mom." As she tidied the living room after he went off to shower, Carla paused by the small shelf of family photos. Most were of just her and Joey, capturing birthdays, first days of school, small triumphs. No Nathaniel in sight. Soon she realized there might be pictures of all three of them, moments she once thought impossible. She traced a finger along the edge of one frame, lips curving into a tentative smile. Maybe it was time to stop bracing for the worst. When she flicked off the living room light, Carla headed to bed, her heart a curious mix of longing and cautious optimism. If tomorrow went well, it could mark a true turning point, proving that Nathaniel could follow through on the simple act of showing up when he promised. As sleep finally claimed her, she silently prayed that just this once her hopes wouldn't be dashed. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like this story, and share it with friends. Saturday arrived with a cloudless sky and a gentle breeze that promised perfect weather for the basketball game. Carla was up early, making scrambled eggs while Joey laced his sneakers in the living room. She couldn't remember the last time she'd seen him so keyed up, a mix of exhilaration and nerves shining in his eyes. He wolfed down breakfast, barely sitting still, and every so often glanced at his phone as though expecting a message from Nathaniel. But there was no text. Carla tried to quell her own unease. She knew Nathaniel had promised to come, but promises sometimes vanished under life's pressures, something she'd learned the hard way. By mid-morning, they were on their way to the school gym. Joey sat in the passenger seat, tapping his feet against the floor, occasionally humming under his breath. Carla cast sidelong glances at him, marveling at how quickly he was growing up. His knees seemed to have shot up another inch since last month, and the angles of his face hinted at the young man he would soon become. She resisted the urge to remind him that no matter the game's outcome, she was proud of him. He knew that already, yet it felt like her duty to offer some reassurance. Still, something held her back, as if speaking too soon might jinx the day. They parked and stepped inside the bustling gym, where the echo of bouncing basketballs ricocheted off the high walls. Parents and classmates filled the bleachers. Carla scanned the crowd, searching for Nathaniel's familiar figure. Nothing yet. She swallowed her disappointment, telling herself there was time. Joey muttered a quick goodbye, jogging off to join his team. Carla found a seat near half-court, saving space just in case Nathaniel showed up. She unzipped her jacket and tried to relax, listening to the squeak of sneakers across the polished floor. Warm-ups flew by, and the referee signaled the teams to line up at center court. Carla's heart drummed louder with each passing second. Still no sign of Nathaniel. Glancing at her phone, she saw no missed calls, no messages. The rational part of her told her not to panic. He might be caught in traffic or finalizing something for that investor. But the memory of how easily he once left Pineview dug its claws into her chest. The tip-off happened in a blur of movement and shouting, and within moments, Joey was sprinting down the court. Carla forced herself to focus on the game. Joey's team wore bright blue jerseys, and she spotted the number 15 on her son's back. He darted past an opponent, driving toward the hoop with surprising agility. Carla cheered, clapping above the din, but her gaze flicked repeatedly toward the main entrance. Halfway through the first quarter, a sudden movement in the crowd snagged her attention. Nathaniel had arrived. He stood at the top of the bleachers, scanning the rows of spectators, hair slightly tousled as though he'd been rushing. Relief flooded Carla's chest, accompanied by a twinge of annoyance that he was late. He caught her eye and offered an apologetic wave, then eased his way down to the seat she'd saved. Up close, she noticed the faint sheen of sweat on his brow, as though he'd run the last block to the gym. "Sorry," he whispered, leaning close so she could hear. "Meeting went long. I came as fast as I could." Carla breathed out, tension draining. "At least you made it," she said, not unkindly. She pointed toward the court. "He's number 15. Nathaniel's gaze locked onto Joey, just as the boy snagged a loose pass and dribbled down the sideline. The thrill of recognition lit Nathaniel's eyes. "He looks good out there," he murmured, voice tinged with pride. Carla nodded, her heart softening a fraction. Perhaps he was late, but he'd shown up. That had to count for something. They turned their attention to the game, cheering along with the throng whenever Joey's team advanced. By the second quarter, the score was close and Carla's nerves twisted in her stomach every time Joey took a shot. He sank 2 baskets, which put his team ahead by a slim margin, and she saw a grin flash across his face when he glimpsed Nathaniel in the stands. During a brief timeout, Joey's eyes found them. Carla waved and Nathaniel raised his hand in a proud salute. Joey nodded, confidence radiating in his posture as he jogged back onto the court. Carla's breath caught. There was something so heartbreakingly simple about watching her son light up under his father's praise. She had always believed Joey was strong on his own, but now she saw how much it meant to him to have Nathaniel's approval. Perhaps that was what had been missing all these years, someone else to share in the joys and pains of parenting. The final quarter was a whirlwind. Joey's team led by a single point, but the other side was relentless. Carla could barely sit still, hugging her coat against her chest as if it might steady her pounding heart. Nathaniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his eyes flicking between the scoreboard and the players. When the final buzzer echoed, Joey's team had managed to hang on for a 2-point win. A jubilant roar filled the gym. Players high-fived and coaches clapped them on the back. Carla exhaled, applause surging from her like a flood. For once, life felt triumphant. Joey, sweaty and breathless, trotted over to the edge of the stands. Carla and Nathaniel descended to meet him, weaving through the departing crowd. "Awesome game," Carla said, smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. "You were incredible." Nathaniel ruffled Joey's hair, an affectionate gesture that made Carla's heart do a tiny flip. "I'm proud of you," he said. "You handled the pressure like a pro." Joey beamed, panting. "Thanks, Dad," he said, and Carla froze at the word. Dad. It rolled off Joey's tongue with such natural ease, yet it reverberated in Carla's chest like a thunderclap. Nathaniel's eyes flickered with emotion, though he quickly composed himself. "Why don't we celebrate?" Nathaniel offered, clearing his throat. "I saw a place nearby that does great burgers. My treat." Carla hesitated, glancing at Joey. He had that open, hopeful look on his face, still flush with victory. She decided to set aside her residual worries. "I think that sounds perfect," she said. Soon, the 3 of them stood outside a modest burger joint where neon letters buzzed in the window. The air carried the crisp scent of fallen leaves, and Carla shivered slightly in her light sweater. Nathaniel reached for the door, ushering them inside. The place was busy with post-game traffic, and they managed to snag one of the last vinyl booths by the window. Joey tore off his jacket, launching into a play-by-play of the final moments on the court. Carla let him talk, nodding at the appropriate pauses, relishing his enthusiasm. When the food came, mountainous burgers and hot, salty fries, Nathaniel looked directly at Joey. "You're really good at basketball," he said, voice warm. "If you ever want extra practice or new gear, just say the word. I'll help." Carla watched her son's reaction, but he merely shrugged, though she could see his pleasure. "That means a lot," he said. "I might take you up on it, but you know, I gotta earn my place on the team." Nathaniel nodded respectfully. "I get that." They ate, weaving in and out of casual conversation. For a fleeting moment, Carla wondered if this was how life might have been had Nathaniel never left Pineview. Family outings to celebrate small victories, passing the ketchup and bantering about after-school activities. She tried not to let regret smother the gratitude she felt. The present moment was what mattered now. After they finished, Nathaniel excused himself to take a quick call from his investor, promising to be back in just a minute. Carla watched him slip outside, phone to his ear. Joey fiddled with a stray fry on his plate, growing uncharacteristically quiet. She set a gentle hand on his wrist. "Everything okay?" she asked. Joey studied her, eyes reflecting a hint of vulnerability. It's just, when I called him Dad earlier, I wasn't sure if that was allowed. It felt right, but also scary. Carla's throat tightened. You can call him whatever you're comfortable with. If it feels right, it's your choice. I know it's a big step. He nodded slowly, twisting the fry between his fingers. He didn't freak out or anything, so that's good. But I just keep thinking, what if he disappears again, Mom? I've never had a dad, so losing him now would... He trailed off, swallowing hard. She reached over and squeezed his hand. I'm scared too, she admitted, voice hushed. But so far, he's proven he wants to stay. We have to give him a chance, but also know we'll be okay if something goes wrong, because we've always been okay, you and me. Joey's eyes glistened as he managed a small smile. Yeah, we have. Nathaniel returned moments later, eyebrows drawn with mild frustration. Sorry, he said, slipping into the booth. Business never sleeps, but I'm all yours now. Carla decided to break the momentary tension. We were just discussing how great that game was, she said, casting Joey a reassuring look. And how we might have to do a repeat of this meal after every one of his wins. Nathaniel grinned. Deal, he replied. Next time I'll cheer louder. By the time they left the burger joint, the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in purples and golds. Carla walked between Nathaniel and Joey, listening to them banter about the best sneaker brands. As they approached her car, Nathaniel cleared his throat, glancing from her to Joey. I'll drive myself home, he said, motioning to his own car across the lot. Then he hesitated. But maybe tomorrow we could do something else? A walk in the park or... Carla glanced at Joey. He gave a small nod, a subtle yes in his eyes. Sure, she answered. Text me. We'll figure it out. Nathaniel's relief was plain on his face. Will do. With a parting wave, he headed off, and Carla and Joey climbed into their car. Joey leaned back against the seat, letting out a long breath. That was a good day, he murmured, almost to himself. Carla couldn't help but agree. For once, the future looked a bit brighter, and the sting of yesterday's scars felt less raw. Maybe tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but at least they had this win. This small, sparkling victory in a life that had known too much loneliness. Carla started the engine, aware of a gentle warmth blossoming in her chest. If they all kept moving forward, step by step, who knew what kind of life they could build? Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like this story, and share it with friends. On Sunday morning, Carla woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the distant hum of lawn mowers in neighboring yards. The day felt ripe with possibility, reminding her of summers from her childhood. As she stretched her arms overhead, she recalled the casual plan they'd made, a walk through Pineview Park, where the old oak trees stood tall, shading winding paths and a small duck pond. Joey had been excited, hoping to show Nathaniel the places he loved in their small town. Carla, still grappling with cautious optimism, told herself that it would be a simple outing. No heavy conversations, no buried secrets, just the three of them sharing a bit of time beneath the bright sky. Yet a flutter of nerves still tugged at her heart. She sighed, feeling resolute. Carla dressed in comfortable jeans and a sweater, then emerged from her room to find Joey pacing the living room, scanning his phone. He texted, Joey reported, voice bright. He'll meet us at the park entrance in half an hour. Hope that's okay. Carla nodded, forcing a smile. Perfect, she said. Together, they left the apartment, strolling under a sky that was miraculously clear despite yesterday's forecast of rain. Her heart thumped with each step, conscious of how easily these moments could slip away. At the park's arched gate, they spotted Nathaniel waiting, hands tucked in his jacket pockets. He smiled broadly when he saw them, and Carla felt her lingering tension ebb just a fraction. "Morning," Nathaniel said. "Ready for this little tour?" Joey grinned and nodded, beckoning them. They followed Joey along the winding path, leaves crunching beneath their shoes with every step. He pointed out the old playground where he'd learned to ride a bike, and the patch of grass near the duck pond where neighborhood kids often played pickup soccer. Carla walked beside Nathaniel, noticing his quiet fascination with this slice of Pineview life. Years ago, he dreamed only of skyscrapers and bustling cities. Now he seemed genuinely curious about the simpler rhythms that shaped Joey's world. When they reached a small wooden bridge, Joey leaned over the railing, tossing a pebble into the stream. Nathaniel joined him, and Carla hovered close, enjoying the sight of them side by side. The water rippled below, reflecting sunlight in brilliant flashes. In that unspoken moment, their family felt almost. They continued through the park, eventually settling at a bench near a cluster of towering pines. Joey checked his phone, a grin tugging at his lips when he saw messages from friends commenting on last week's basketball victory. Carla and Nathaniel exchanged a brief glance, and she realized how comfortable silence could be when it wasn't weighed down by old resentments. Eventually, Nathaniel cleared his throat, turning to Carla. "I've been meaning to tell you. Things with the data center are moving forward fast. If all goes well, I'll need to relocate some staff here. That means more time in Pineview. Permanently, maybe." Carla nodded, heart pounding as she absorbed the weight of that possibility. She breathed out, hoping he could sense her cautious acceptance. Joey simply listened, wide-eyed, intrigued. Before Carla could respond, Joey piped up. "Does that mean you'll stay here for real?" His question hung in the warm autumn air, so direct that Carla felt her heart clamp tight. Nathaniel paused, meeting Joey's gaze. "That's what I'd like," he said. "No more quick visits, no half measures. But only if that's okay with you two." Carla felt Joey's eyes flick to her, waiting for an answer. She placed a hand on Joey's shoulder, drawing courage from the warmth of that contact. "If you're truly serious," she said softly, "and not just chasing another dream, then yes, we want you around." Nathaniel swallowed, relief crossing his features in a flicker of gratitude. Joey exhaled, the ghost of a smile curving his lips as he realized they might finally be a family. After a while, they rose from the bench and ambled onward, the conversation veering into light-hearted banter. Joey teased Carla about her occasional cooking mishaps, prompting Nathaniel to chuckle. Carla playfully nudged her son, feigning offense. Beneath the mild humor, a sense of relief threaded through each exchange. They meandered toward the duck pond, where a pair of mallards glided across the rippling water. Nathaniel dug into his pocket for spare crumbs from a breakfast bar, tossing them gently so the ducks paddled closer. Joey knelt to watch, enthralled by the birds' bright plumage. Carla leaned against a low fence, feeling the gentle press of possibility swirl around them. For once, her guarded heart rested, lulled by the tranquility of the park and the quiet promise in Nathaniel's presence. Eventually, they circled back to the park entrance, where a small farmer's market had sprouted for the weekend. Vendors sold homemade jams, fresh produce, and artisanal crafts. Joey spotted a stall displaying wooden figurines, each carved with careful detail. He picked one up, a miniature basketball player dribbling a ball, and admired the craftsmanship. Nathaniel slipped the vendor a few bills before Joey could protest, pressing the figurine into his son's hand. Carla braced herself for Joey to reject the gift, but he only smiled, turning it over as though it were a small treasure. They continued browsing, sampling homemade lemonade and biting into sweet pastries. Carla marveled at the normalcy of this moment, a family-like stroll, unforced and simple. She caught Nathaniel's eye, and he nodded as if sensing her thoughts. By midday, the sun hung high, and they decided to grab lunch at a nearby cafe. The door chimed when they entered, and the aroma of freshly baked bread enveloped them. They found a table by the window, ordering sandwiches and iced tea. Carla watched Nathaniel lean forward, listening intently as Joey described a coding project he'd begun at the youth program. The boy's enthusiasm was contagious, and Nathaniel's face mirrored that excitement. Carla felt a gentle tug in her chest, remembering how, once upon a time, Nathaniel had spoken with that same spark about his dreams of success. Now those dreams were taking shape here in Pineview, intertwined with Joey's future. She sipped her tea, hoping this shared ambition would hold them all together, forging something stronger than regret. After lunch, they wandered outside, strolling past a row of quaint storefronts. Nathaniel glanced at his phone, wincing slightly as he read a notification. "I hate to cut this short," he said, slipping the device into his pocket, "but I have a conference call in an hour. Can I drop you both home?" Joey looked disappointed but nodded, fiddling with the figurine in his hand. Carla felt a pang of sympathy, yet she admired Nathaniel's willingness to juggle his responsibilities. Back at the apartment building, they paused on the curb, reluctant to part ways. Nathaniel caught Joey in a quick one-armed hug, then turned to Carla, voice low. "Thank you for today. It meant a lot to me." She nodded, warmth blossoming in her chest. "Us too," she murmured, shy. That afternoon, Carla and Joey curled up on the couch, sifting through memories of the morning's outing. He held the wooden figurine gingerly, reflecting on how life had changed since Nathaniel's reappearance. "Remember when I yelled, 'Mom, that's him,' the day he first walked into the diner?" Joey asked, eyes shining. Carla did remember, her heart clenching at the memory of shock and fear, yet now she felt hope instead. "We've come a long way," she whispered, smiling softly. Outside, golden light bathed the street, and Carla sensed that their world had shifted onto steadier ground. Maybe the road ahead wasn't guaranteed, but together they would keep moving forward. She wrapped an arm around Joey, pulling him close, and in that quiet moment they wished for the future they deserved. You've liked this story. Please subscribe to our channel, like the story, and share it with friends.